Hello, I am Warren Spector.
And I am David Swansbuckle.
We're coming to you live from our ivory towers, and yesterday the Illuminati rang us up and said this.
Because let me be clear, Britain deserves a pay rise and Britain is getting a pay rise. I am today introducing a new national living wage.
Right.
Yes. There's been another thing happening this week. There has been our budget.
Another budget.
Yeah. The thing to really encompass it is Britain needs a pay rise. That's what Osborne said, which was the slogan of the TUC in the 80s. What's happened there? Is that, what's happening? Well, yeah, which essentially meant, they've increased the minimum wage. Well, there's going to be an increase in the minimum wage. It's going to move up with inflation. But notice they haven't called it the minimum wage. It's now called the national living wage.
William Lutz, what is doublespeak?
Doublespeak is language designed to evade responsibility, make the unpleasant appear pleasant.
Because the minimum wage, it's the thing Labour did. And Labour, that was disastrous with the economy, wasn't it? So we don't do that. We do a new, different thing. We're good with the economy. And we help working people. Duncan Smith, of course, punched the air. Yeah! They had to film that twice. So I wonder if he punched the air twice. I wouldn't be surprised to make sure the cameras got it. Because the headlines, the way it was presented was spin. This was a new Labour budget in that sense, in that what came out of it in the media and everything wasn't quite what was underneath. In a lot of ways, you've got student grants, which are still a thing. Most people won't realise there is such a thing, but for very poor people, there are still student grants, which is quite right. Regardless of whether you think there should be grants for everybody, which is much more extreme, they've been wiped out. There should be loans. Because they should pay it back.
Yeah.
They should be slaves to the system forever.
Strong, you load 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt.
Yeah.
Child tax credit is being screwed over as well. But it isn't the horror everyone expected, is it? That's the thing. Which is why I think it's a new Labour thing, in that there's the more you read into it, the more you think, there's horrible bits of it. But actually, it's been presented in a nice, fluffy way that makes it feel like the centre ground. And I think, whereas I said Cameron is playing things very, very short term. He plays it week by week. He only responds, but he doesn't think about it next week. He just thinks about it now, and that's what's got him there. But George Osborne is playing the opposite. He's playing the very, very long term. This is about keeping the Tories in government.
And shoring up his own leadership bid when Cameron steps down in 2020.
Indeed.
I think a few things have got to come out from this budget. Ed Miliband is pilloried.
Speaker, that it certainly takes guts to get in a swimming costume and dive off the high board. Can I say to her, if she's looking for a new challenge, she should try wrestling a bacon sandwich live on national television.
Almost unanimously in all the media, whether they're supportive of the left or the right, Ed Miliband is pilloried. Yeah, here is a guy who's possibly the most effective opposition leader in terms of actually getting stuff done. He's not a very effective opposition leader in terms of what he did for the Labour Party, but in terms of the influence he's had on policies that actually affect people has been quite dramatic, because there are a lot of policies in that budget
which are nicked from Labour.
Which are nicked from the Labour manifesto.
Yeah.
And everyone who said, Ed Miliband, he's dragging the Labour Party over to the left, such a terrible mistake.
Yeah. The question is, does anyone really believe that budget would have been any different with Labour? I don't think it would have been any different.
But here comes the other issue, economic credibility, Labour have a big problem with economic credibility in the eyes of the electorate. It is Labour policies that have basically got us to where we're at. Labour's plan, or the Darling plan, was to halve the deficit in one parliament, which is effectively what happened last parliament. Yeah, and now they've taken Labour's speed to reduce the deficit, as outlined in their manifesto, and decided they're going to implement that. There are lots of specific policies in terms of apprenticeships and things like that they've plucked from the Labour manifesto. In essence, are Labour policies. If you are one of these people who buy into the notion that we have turned things round. It's sunny uplands now. Everything's out. It's a little bit unsteady, but basically we're there. We've just got to finish the job now. Well, if you're one of those people, that's thanks to Labour policies, effectively. Yeah. George Osborne has missed practically every single one of his targets he set out. He wanted to eliminate the deficit in one parliament. Yeah. He wanted to maintain the AAA credit rating. All these things he's completely failed on, yeah? And it's turned out that Labour actually nailed it bang on. The rate in which we reduce the deficit, we'll try and do half this parliament and then see what we can do in the next parliament.
That's exactly what
That's exactly what's happened.
Yeah, it's so cleverly spun. They are being New Labour. It is New Labour.
I don't think that's necessarily true, actually. I don't think New Labour would have hammered the poor to the extent that George Osborne has hammered the poor in this. The working poor, put it that way.
I don't know. I mean, remember how...
They did. I mean, there's no doubt about it. New Labour were particularly harsh on the poor.
They were centre-right.
Yeah.
In terms of that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think that this is beyond the pale as far as New Labour would have gone. I mean, it looked all rosy. There's going to be a £7.20 an hour minimum wage rising to £9. Sounds exciting. Paid for by business nonetheless. Standing up to vested interests, as Ed Miliband would put it, and saying that businesses have got to do their share. But when you actually look at the breakdown of who's actually going to pay, it is the very bottom of society who are actually working.
Yeah.
So actually, people who are out of work aren't going to lose as much as people who are in work. So if you're in work on minimum wage, you're going to lose much more money than any middle income earners and the like. So actually, I think New Labour would have skewed it slightly more to the middle, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, the climate's slightly different now, in that the tabloids, we'll call them, have pushed things further, and I think it's had more of an effect. And there's been that synthetic shift to the right, which I don't think is real. And I think New Labour were all about responding to that in the same way that George Osborne has responded to that. You help the people who the tabloids like. You don't help the people who the tabloids hate. There's no point in helping people who don't work because the tabloids hate them. There's no point in helping teachers or nurses or students because the tabloids don't like them. But you help the working man.
Well, I mean, it is patently clear now that the poor in this country have no representation.
Thanks, Blair.
Well, it's not only Blair. I mean, Liz Kendall, who I think at the moment looks particularly stupid because she's the one who's stuck the knife into the last Labour leadership the most, and it turns out that actually on policies, as we've previously said, on policies, Labour won the last general election. It was only when the Tories realised, actually, we're not getting a look in policy-wise. Let's go and get the help of the SNP. Big up the SNP. And there's more and more polling information coming out that the biggest effect on the election outcome was the SNP. So not only did Labour lose MPs in Scotland, but the fear of the SNP coming down to England, telling us what to do,
which would only happen if Labour won.
Yeah, made voters, sort of floating voters, think look more kindly towards the Conservatives. So I think there's a lot of the battle for history has already started. People are already putting their interpretations on it. I think most of those interpretations are factually inaccurate at the moment. I'm hoping in a few years' time people can actually look back and go, actually, yeah.
Well, I say thanks, Blair, but this is something that's been happening since 1979. It's a huge... A decision was made somewhere. This is what we have to do. It's not going to be politically successful. People aren't going to vote for it. So we've got the media now. We've got, since 1979, that's the accessibility of information has grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. So we've got to control that, and that's what they've done. And Margaret Thatcher did that just as much. She was a spin person just as much.
Yeah. It's amazing how successful it's been actually, and quite disheartening. I mean, I've listened to actual real people in this town, which isn't a particularly
nice town. Yeah, it's not a nice town.
It's not a metropolitan town, put it that way. Who have turned around and said, "Well, it's good." There's people out there who've just had kids to have council houses.
Yeah, which doesn't happen. Happen.
They get all these working tax credits. I go to work and I can't afford any of that. And you just, that spirit.
Yeah, if I'm working hard, I work harder than everybody else.
Everyone else gets everything for free. It's factually inaccurate. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's less than 4% of households have more than 2 children in them.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, that sort of settlement after the Second World War, which we harp on about in this country. I'm not a big fan of going on about the war, but it's an obsession with quite a lot of people in this country.
It's an obsession to sort of spin it in
Yeah.
a dodgy way, really, isn't it?
That settlement where we recognise the sort of sense of solidarity we had amongst each other, and how we really, come together in times of adversity. I don't think we could actually win. If that war was repeated now, I don't think we could win, because
No, we wouldn't. No.
the sense of solidarity
Yeah.
that we had has gone.
They will drop thousands of bombs, and they'll destroy hundreds of buildings, and they'll kill thousands of people. But a bomb has its limitations. It can only destroy buildings and kill people. It cannot kill the unconquerable spirit and courage of the people of London.
The sense of mutual hatred has been enforced, has been hammered over us
Yeah.
for 35 years.
Think of yourself.
Yeah, and those people next door, they're on benefits, obviously.
Yeah.
All that stuff
They've got
they've
big
got.
TVs.
I work so hard.
Oh, I haven't got a big TV. Well, I've got
Yeah.
kind of big TV, but not as many big TVs as them.
Yeah, and then I get to work at 9 o'clock and I make a cup of coffee and I sit down at my desk. I do some clicking and then I go home at 5 o'clock. I work hard. Wonder how many people do exactly that.
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of depressing. The right are loving it. They think this is the glory days. I think that will come apart as well, because patently the idea that it pays to work has been kicked into the long grass, and we're in an era of doing economic policy not by focus group but by headline almost.
Yeah,
Sort
that's
of,
the thing.
If you can spin it into a decent headline, that's what we do. There's no.
The actual effect of it doesn't even matter. Yeah, I'm sure that's not even a consideration.
The point has been made that it was like he looked at certain groups. Who can I tax who would have relatively little comeback in the press? And that's who he's gone for.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are moves against sort of hedge fund managers and big landlords, because it would be relatively difficult for them to garner any sympathy in the press. But similarly, the working poor, who have no representation at all in this country, have taken the brunt of it again, as predicted. The "we're all in this together" mantra of the last part it's not even mentioned anymore, is it?
Yeah, but I mean, Cameron. I mean, I'll cut the deficit, not the NHS. and there's that quote from 2007. He went to stay, I think, with a Muslim family in Birmingham, I think, and he said something about, well, mainstream Britain needs to integrate into this. This is part of our country, To now, actually, all Muslims are secretly supporting ISIS. They're just not saying it, but they are secretly.
Except the BBC, who shouldn't call them Islamic State, which is completely out of order.
Actually, the BBC's fault, ISIS. They caused it.
Yeah.
I'd like to end on a thing, and I think, in the end, there is a shift to the left. And when I say left, I don't mean socialism, I mean shift to liberal thinking. There are micro movements to the right. But I think, overall, if you look over the last 100 years, even the last 20 years, a Tory government having a minimum wage is unheard of. Now, there's still horrible far-right social conservative stuff in there. Of course, they're the Tories, but overall, we are moving left. If you look at it in the macro arena, that's what I'm going to say. Is that true? Let us know.
It's a good question to end on, Warren. Okay, next week, there's no... I don't know what's going to happen next week.
We don't know, the news hasn't happened yet.
We'll see what happens in Greece. Tunisia, it sounds like things are bubbling up in Tunisia. People have been told to get the hell out of there and don't go there. So maybe something will happen there next week. Let's hope not.
So left-wing lizard overlords will ring us up next week
and
tell us what to say. See you then.